It was a cold, rainy evening in Manhattan when the mighty billionaire Victor Harrington made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Standing in the grand foyer of his opulent penthouse, he stared down at the tiny infant in a specialized crib. A baby boy born with a physical disability that required delicate care. Victor, the ruthless real estate mogul revered for his relentless ambition, had little patience for anything that might tarnish his perfect, curated lifestyle. In his eyes, a son with a disability was a weak link. It wasn't that he lacked the means to help, rather he lacked the heart. At the height of his success, where respect was measured by glamorous parties, exclusive clubs, and magazine covers, he saw this child as a burden that could tarnish his carefully polished image. Ignoring the tearful pleas of his wife, Evelyn, Victor announced his decision. He was leaving, severing himself from both mother and child. Evelyn fought for her son's rightful place, but Victor refused to listen. He was more concerned with forging new deals than forging a bond with his disabled son. "What about your son's future?" Evelyn pleaded, tears streaming down her face, her arms protectively wrapped around the baby boy. Victor replied coldly, "You figure it out. This life isn't meant for weakness." Then he turned on his heel, footsteps echoing across marble floors and disappeared into the night, abandoning his child, his marriage, and any responsibility he owed them. Little did he know that single action would shape his destiny decades down the line. Evelyn named her son Lucas. He was born with a condition affecting his legs, meaning he needed regular physical therapy and the use of crutches as he grew. Though the financial support from Victor's lawyers arrived as sporadic checks, just enough to keep them from total ruin, it came with an unwritten reminder that Lucas wasn't wanted by the father who bore him. Despite this, Evelyn poured her heart into raising Lucas with love and determination. She worked multiple jobs to afford the best therapy and adaptive equipment she could find. At school, Lucas faced ridicule from peers who didn't understand his disability. But Evelyn's unwavering support turned every cruel word into fuel for his resilience. In truth, Lucas was brilliant, wise beyond his years, with a calm demeanor that surprised even his teachers. Where other children saw limitation, he saw the opportunity to prove them wrong. He studied harder than anyone else. Late at night, when Evelyn dozed off after a long shift, Lucas would continue reading and solving practice tests, determined to show that disability did not equate to inability. By the time he reached his teens, he had his sights set on law school. Whenever anyone asked him why law, he would respond, "Because I believe in justice for everyone, especially those who've been overlooked." Evelyn, proud of her son's passion, worked tirelessly to make his dreams a reality. And eventually, Lucas, with the help of scholarships, grants, and unstoppable dedication, earned admission into one of the top law schools in the country. While Lucas pushed through adversity to chase his dreams, Victor Harrington soared to even greater heights of wealth. His name appeared on business magazines' covers, his net worth soared into the billions, and he lived for the next major conquest. More properties, bigger deals, more lavish galas. But with every step upward, so too did his arrogance grow. Trusted partners found themselves cheated. Former allies turned competitors. Rumors of shady deals and questionable accounting began swirling around Victor's empire. Whenever journalists asked about his personal life, particularly the rumor that he had an abandoned son, Victor dismissed them with icy disdain. "My personal matters are my own," he would say, "and my success is proof enough that I make the right choices." Yet cracks were beginning to form in the gilded walls of Harrington Enterprises. Investigations into financial misconduct threatened his empire. His once loyal CFO resigned for personal reasons, fueling suspicions among government agencies. Eventually, a formal lawsuit was filed against Harrington Enterprises, accusing Victor of orchestrating a massive tax evasion scheme. Victor, still smug, believed he could buy his way out of any legal tangle. He hired an army of lawyers. He pulled every favor he had. But a day came when those tactics weren't enough anymore. A court summons arrived, compelling him to appear before a judge. There was no more hiding behind attorneys. He would have to appear in person and answer for his wrongdoings. The day of the hearing, an older but still haughty Victor Harrington walked into the grand marble courthouse. The corridors were silent. except for the clicking of shoes on the polished floor. Victor wore an immaculate suit, shoulders thrown back in confidence, a forced smile on his face that said, "I'm in control." He expected a routine hearing, another judge who'd eventually bow to his influence. But fate had different plans. Entering the courtroom, Victor's gaze fell upon the figure seated behind the raised bench. The judge. Something about this man, though young for the position, carried an air of dignity and intellect. He was poised, scanning the room with calm authority. Then, Victor noticed the subtle detail that made his heart pound. Behind the judge's bench, carefully positioned out of view for most, were a pair of forearm crutches. Time seemed to slow to a stop. Victor's lawyer whispered, "Your Honor," addressing the judge, but Victor's mind was elsewhere. He stared into the judge's face, a face that looked unmistakably familiar. Brown eyes, sharp features, an expression that was both composed and resolute. The shock threw Victor as memory upon memory flooded back. A baby in a specialized crib, a tearful Evelyn, a child once considered a weak link. Lucas, his abandoned son, Judge Lucas Harrington, though in all his official documents he used his mother's maiden name and was known as Judge Lucas Carter, sat before the courtroom. His expression remained impartial, the hallmark of a fair-minded judge, but beneath that calm exterior was a swirl of emotion. He recognized his father the instant Victor strode through the doors. Years of therapy, education, and quiet determination had culminated in this moment. The day he, once dismissed and belittled, held the gavel that would decide the future of the man who had forsaken him. For a fleeting moment, old wounds reopened in Lucas's heart. Memories of feeling unworthy, of seeing his mother cry, of working twice as hard to prove he belonged. Yet he took a measured breath. He had a duty to the law, to justice, and to himself, to show compassion without compromising what was right. "Mr. Harrington, the court is now in session," Lucas announced, voice steady, betraying no personal grief. "We will hear the evidence against you regarding the charges of fraud and tax evasion." Victor's mind raced. He felt an icy terror welling up. This was more than legal trouble. This was cosmic irony. The very child he had left behind now had the authority to judge him. Panic set in as the prosecution began laying out the case, referencing hidden accounts, falsified statements, and testimonies from Victor's former employees. While the prosecution spoke, Victor couldn't focus. His gaze kept flickering to those crutches, near Lucas's seat. He recalled how he had once declared his disabled child unworthy of his empire. Now that child wasn't simply part of his empire, he was beyond it, commanding a higher power, the scales of justice. Finally, it was the defense's turn. Victor's high-priced lawyer argued that Harrington Enterprises had made minor accounting errors, not an intentional scheme. He insisted this was all a misunderstanding, but the evidence said otherwise. Each piece hammered home that Victor had known exactly what he was doing. Lucas listened with professional composure, though inside he felt a private sorrow. It wasn't about revenge, but about truth. He was resolute in his role, to uncover the facts and uphold the law no matter how personal the circumstances. When the lawyers finished, the gallery waited in tense silence. All eyes fell on Judge Lucas. He cleared his throat, hands resting calmly on the bench. "Mr. Harrington," he began, controlling the emotion in his voice, "the evidence before this court is overwhelming. Significant funds were diverted, accounts hidden. There is a burden of proof and the prosecution has met it. The law does not discriminate, no matter the defendant's wealth or power." A hush fell over the crowd as Lucas continued. "Before I issue my ruling, is there anything you wish to say?" Victor rose, trembling in a way he never had before. The confident billionaire, used to having the world at his feet, now found himself at the mercy of the son he had rejected. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He cleared his throat, tried again. "I don't know if you can forgive me," he began in a shaky tone. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. When I left you and your mother, it was—" He stopped, shaking his head. "I was a fool, haunted by my own pride. Please, if there's any part of you that—" But his words trailed off. This wasn't a family reunion. This was a court, and the man behind the bench was Judge Lucas Carter, sworn to impartiality. Lucas inhaled carefully. He steadied his emotions and looked around the silent room. "Mr. Harrington, your personal appeal is noted. However, this court's duty is to the law. My judgment will reflect that duty." With clarity and professional grace, Lucas rendered his decision. The final verdict acknowledged the severity of the crimes. There would be substantial financial penalties, restitution to the government, and further legal consequences. It was, by any measure, a harsh outcome, one that would cost Victor Harrington his spotless corporate reputation and a significant portion of his fortune. Yet, as Lucas closed the files, he looked Victor in the eye. For the briefest moment, father and son regarded each other across the silent courtroom. And though the sentence was stern, there was also a glimmer of compassion in Lucas's gaze, an understanding that though the law demanded accountability, personal wounds demanded a different kind of closure. A media storm erupted around the verdict. Headlines blared, "Billionaire brought down by abandoned son." A father faces justice in his son's courtroom. The story went viral almost instantly, with everyone discussing the shocking twist of fate. Victor Harrington's empire took a massive hit. Shareholders jumped ship. The business world watched a once invincible mogul see his net worth shrink and his reputation crumble. In the aftermath, he stood outside the courthouse, where cameras flashed in a frenzy. Beyond the reporters, he spotted Evelyn, older now, her hair touched with gray. Standing at her side was Lucas, leaning on his crutches, yet looking tall and resolute in his black judicial robes. Victor hesitated, unsure if he should even approach. But then Lucas's expression softened, as if extending a silent bridge. Carefully, uncertainly, Victor walked closer. He looked at Lucas and Evelyn with the weight of regret etched into every line of his face. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Victor managed, voice rough with emotion. "But if there's ever a chance to speak, to at least try to make amends, I'd do anything." Silence. Evelyn's eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and sympathy. Lucas studied his father, recalling every trial that shaped his life. Then, with a patient sigh, he placed a hand gently on his father's shoulder. "It's not about deserving," he said, his voice calm. "It's about moving forward." It wasn't a grand reconciliation. Those kinds of wounds take time to heal. But it was a moment of humanity. A starting point for a father who realized too late the priceless value of the son he'd cast aside. In the months that followed, Victor Harrington started paying the penalties from the ruling, his net worth plummeting. Many of the friends who once orbited his wealth vanished. But perhaps in that humbling chapter, he found something more valuable than money. An opportunity to grow and atone. Evelyn continued her life's work, proud of the man Lucas had become. As for Lucas, he remained on the bench, presiding over cases with the same fairness and integrity he displayed that fateful day. And though father and son didn't become close overnight, each step forward became a reminder that it's never too late for honesty, redemption, and the hope of mending broken bonds. What do you think? Would you have given Victor a second chance if you were in Lucas's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss more powerful stories like this. Remember, no matter how far we've strayed from what's right, it's never too late to seek a better path.